Esteemed colleagues, we continue the working day, and I invite the OSCE Special Monitoring Mission spokesperson Michael Bociurkiw with the information on Ukraine and activities of the mission. Michael, you're welcome.
Шановні друзі, колеги,
Dear friends, colleagues,
to our weekly media briefing. And first of all, I'd like to congratulate the Ukrainian Crisis Media Center for their lovely new accommodations, and very impressive indeed, so congratulations. Now, let me start, if I will, briefly about the list of ceasefire violations in the 24-hour period up until roughly 1800 yesterday. You will see from the list that the number of violations or observed violations is shorter than in previous weeks, so of course that's a positive sign. But yesterday, essentially, quite heavy shelling appeared in and around the area of Donetsk airport. We're talking around midday, and multiple launch rocket system rockets. So this was not light weaponry. This was heavy shelling for an intense period of time. Also in Mayorsk, we heard, this is from our Kramatorsk-Mayorsk team, we heard light mortar rounds yesterday morning. And from Mariupol, other than our teams observing static heavy weaponry, there wasn't any recordings of heavy shelling there. Now, of course, we are continuing to keep a close eye on the area around Mariupol. A couple of the towns there have been, subject to quite heavy shelling, and also Donetsk, as I mentioned. And the hotspot of Debaltseve hasn't been in our daily report for at least 1 or 2 days now. So now I'm going to move on to the very hot topic of withdrawal of heavy weaponry. We are continuing to get a lot of calls on this topic. And I know, forgive me if I sound a little bit like a broken record, but I think it's crucially important that all sides understand what the conditions are when it comes to withdrawal of heavy weaponry. So I can tell you that since the announcement of the ceasefire in mid-February, we have been dispatching, the Special Monitoring Mission to Ukraine has been dispatching on average up to 30 patrols a day in the east. And many of them have been specifically designated to monitoring the movement and withdrawal of heavy weaponry. I must say, though, that there have been several occasions where the patrols have been prevented from proceeding to the endpoints or collection points where the weapons are being moved to, and of course this is unacceptable. To cooperate in good faith at our end, we have been insisting all sides to provide the necessary baseline information for us to be able to effectively monitor the withdrawal of heavy weaponry. And I can tell you that although we follow and monitor the withdrawal of heavy weapons, the Special Monitoring Mission to Ukraine is not yet in a position to provide verification of withdrawals. Now, to repeat, in order for the verification process to be credible, the OSCE Special Monitoring Mission to Ukraine needs to know, number one, what heavy weapons the sides have and where the weapons are now. Number two, which routes they shall be withdrawn or which corridors. And number three, where they will be located after they've been withdrawn. And in addition to that, the Special Monitoring Mission requires to be able to visit the storage or collection sites repeatedly, if necessary. Of course, the reason for this is obvious, is that we have to be able to verify that the withdrawn weapons are not returned to the conflict zone and that they remain out of harm's way. So what is needed is unfettered, unlimited, full access to all areas, anytime and at our will. And the access needs to be safe. And this includes in buildings and barracks. Now, we are often asked when we will be able to report that the weapons are indeed withdrawn and safely and securely stored. Well, the answer to that is it's uncertain. This is a fairly long, complicated process, and of course one which needs to happen in good faith. And I can tell you, as far as we're concerned, the Special Monitoring Mission to Ukraine, we take our duty to tell the truth very, very seriously. Full verification depends on both sides adhering to the conditions. And also, of course, our priority is full implementation of the Minsk documents, including full adherence to the ceasefire and that withdrawal of heavy weaponry without delay, which I've been talking about. And in addition, we are reminding once again all sides that in order to do this job, which we've been entrusted with, is we require unrestricted access, safe and secure access. Now, in terms of, I mentioned some of the ceasefire violations over the past 24 hours. As you can see, there weren't many. Hence, we can say that there has been a significant decrease in ceasefire violations over the past few days, although there are those hotspots that I mentioned of Donetsk and Shorokhin near Mariupol. And hence, still, while we do have a little bit more calm than before, we do continue to call upon all sides to exercise maximum restraint. The violence needs to stop. It needs to stop now, because the toll on innocent civilians has been catastrophic in some cases. And remember when we talked to you about our first visit to Debaltseve, our monitors mentioned at that time that there wasn't one building that they saw that wasn't untouched by the shelling. And probably by now many of you are familiar with the numbers from the United Nations, but I'll just repeat them because they've been doing a sterling job with these numbers, but also they're related to what we see on the ground. But the UNHCR made public just recently that more than 1 million people have now been officially displaced, in other words, recorded as displaced. And also the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights and WHO report that the number of people killed since the start of the conflict has now surpassed the 6,000 mark. Before we go on to questions, I'll just say a few words about the current mission strength. As of today, we have 452 monitors, of which 2/3 are based in the east of Ukraine. A new group of monitors is in Kiev as we speak. In fact, we just came from a training with them. So soon you can see that we'll be reaching our mandated ceiling of 500 monitors. And on that point, I know some of you have called asking whether it's possible for us to increase our numbers, and anything to do with that substantial change does require a change to the mandate, of course, unanimously endorsed by all 57 participating states. Now, aside from the 452 monitors, we have an additional 56 international colleagues and 188 national or Ukrainian colleagues, and that's a total of almost 700 mission members. And as most of you should know by now, we're based in 10 cities throughout Ukraine, and in addition to that, we have certain patrol hubs such as Mariupol, Kramatorsk, Severodonetsk. And our monitors are drawn from about 40 different countries, and important to point out that at least 50% of them have military experience. So on that, I'll end, and I'll be happy to take any questions from you.
Wall Street Journal.
Hi, Michael. Thank you so much for interesting account. So I have two questions, actually. President Poroshenko, a couple of days ago, he called for OSCE SMM to establish their presence at 10 points where the ceasefire has been violated since recently. So I'm just wondering, and also he called for you guys to provide daily reports. I'm not sure what he specifically meant by that, because we know that you publish daily reports, but maybe he was calling for more comprehensive reports or reports in different languages. I don't know specifically, but still, how do you plan to address that, if at all? And the second question, what's the situation in the contact line zone right now in terms of weapons? I mean, despite the heavy weapon withdrawal, do you still observe a lot of ordinary weapons? Do you see as much forces as they've been before? So could you elaborate on that a little bit? Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, on the second question, if I could take that first, we do continue to observe what we call static or stationary heavy weaponry. For example, I think a T-64 battle tank would fall into that category. And I remember in the past few days as well, multiple launch rocket systems. So definitely on both sides, there's been observation of static military equipment. And then again, you know, this goes back to what we mentioned earlier as one of our three, you know, kind of preconditions or prerequisites, if you will, for us to be able to monitor withdrawal of heavy weaponry. That's why we need an inventory of what exists right now. What do you have on the ground of this category, of this caliber? And then after that, the plans to move it. On the reporting, you're right, we report daily. Our reports go out to all 57 participating states, and then there's a public version that goes out. And also, it's important to point out that these are very diligently translated daily into Ukrainian and Russian and available on our website. When the conditions, when the events on the ground call for it, we do issue what are called spot reports. These are when significant events happen where our monitors are able to go there, heavy shelling, for example, or any of the bus bombings or explosion, which are well known by now. And then on President Poroshenko's call, I don't really want to comment on what was discussed at higher levels, because we are a very operational on the ground mission. And I'll just go back to what I said earlier about we are reaching our mandated or resourced ceiling of 500 monitors, 10 locations in east and west of Ukraine, supplemented by some patrol hubs. And I should also say that the Special Monitoring Mission, Ambassador Apakan, our Deputy Chief Monitor, have been speaking intensively with participating states about enhancing our ability to use high technology to better monitor the situation on the ground. So that could include, for example, more unmanned aerial vehicles or camcopters. Right now we have 2 of the original 4 that are operational. That could include the use of satellites and other things, but can't go into too much detail there. But rest assured is that we're coming up to our ceiling, but there are other ways too of enhancing the ability to do this more intensive, comprehensive monitoring. But I can tell you that the interest in what the mission has reported has been intense. It's been discussed at the UN Security Council by some major powers. I think we can honestly say that the work the mission has been doing, especially in terms of that daily reporting, has been very widely consumed and applauded. Yeah, and the other thing that we shouldn't forget is that in order for us to continue to do this work diligently in such detail as we do, is we require unfettered access and secure access. When we go to check out a event or like a shelling, or if we go to, for example, if the mission, for example, has been able to arrange some temporary truces in order for utility workers to come in order for aid to be delivered. When both sides agree to that truce and then shelling occurs, well, the side that violated that truce, they know who they are. And this is unacceptable. And they should know that, you know, at the end of the day, the people who really suffer are the innocent civilians on the ground. In the area around Donetsk airport, when it quieted down there enough for us to go visit, I think we can use the word astounded. We were astounded that innocent civilians living there have been surviving without power and running water for 7 months. And we're seeing similar situations in smaller towns and villages around Donetsk where people have been surviving on very, very little. We have hospitals telling us horrific stories of lack of essential drugs, lack of money to pay their employees. We hear the same thing from school teachers in the region. So this knock-on effect that doesn't really reach the headlines every day is, I think, really important to point out. Sorry, that's a long answer to your simple question.
П'ятий канал. Скажіть, будь ласка, два питання.
Fifth channel, 2 questions to you. And does the Ukrainian side provide you with all the necessary information about its routes? Does it provide you with maps? And please verify the information that militants are withdrawing the heavy weaponry while your representatives are present, and then during the night they return it to the previous positions.
Well, I'll just repeat again, to ensure verification of withdrawal, the Special Monitoring Mission requires comprehensive information sharing, not the current piecemeal approach that both sides are practicing. So when you ask me about the Ukrainian side, there's still substantial information required to come our way, and that the information has to be whole, integrated. It can't be piecemeal. And again, what we're looking for is baseline data, including an inventory of weapons, withdrawal routes, and concentration points. Also, I mean, what happens at night, or is heavy weaponry being moved around behind our backs or behind other people's backs? This is why I'm really emphasizing the need for us to be able to constantly go back to the collection or storage points that the sides have told us where they're taking their weapons. Again, we need to go to these collection points, in fact, all areas, anytime, on our own terms, at our will. And again, access needs to be safe.
Hi, Michael, ARD German TV, Georgi Tichy. So I have a specific question about Mariupol direction, which still remains a hotspot. Our cameraman observed mortar fire yesterday there. And we talked yesterday to Dmitry Timchuk, Ukrainian military expert, let's say, in the MP. And he says that from their sources, they observed that near Mariupol there is an attacking grouping which is being collected there by separatists and, I don't know, Russian forces. And that they kind of may prepare an offensive there, and they even sometimes withdraw weapons from, for example, the Debaltsevo theater, show it as a withdrawal, and then redislocate it to Novoazovsk, to Mariupol. So my question is, do you have, and have you had in the latest days access to Novoazovsk, Shirokino, these cities? And what details can you tell about the groupings of forces there? Yeah,
it's a good question. Novoazovsk has been not accessible for us for a very long time, even before the ceasefire. Shirokino, from my understanding, is there's a limit to how close we can get, and basically that's because of safety reasons, because of heavy shelling. I don't want to guess or speculate what one side or the other is planning, but the scenario you just described underpins why, and I hope everyone understands this clearly, underpins why we are insisting that all sides stick to the prerequisites for withdrawal that we've mentioned. Because if we don't have that inventory, if we don't have the routes, if we don't have information on where they're going to store it, and if we aren't able to go back to those points day after day on short notice, the sides cannot expect us to rubber stamp or give them that stamp of credible withdrawal.
Parpara, you've mentioned the number of employees on the side of Ukraine, that is 188. How many employees are there from Russia?
Number of monitors from the Russian Federation is in the neighborhood of about 20. I can get back to you with the latest 20. These numbers do change slightly as we're reaching that 500 number, but I can tell you that at the moment, generally speaking, no country really exceeds over 10% of the total. Again, this question comes up often, and I want to emphasize 2 or 3 things if I can, is that when people come into the mission, they have very intensive training, they sign that code of conduct, they become members of the mission. They're not representing an individual country. Myself, I'm a Canadian national, but I'm here not as representing Canada, but as a spokesperson, as a mission member. And any country, any participating state does have the right, of course, to second members to the mission. I can tell you also lately is that we're thankful, of course, to all participating states seconding monitors to the mission, and some of them are now very specialized because in the course of the work that we do, this, for example, ceasefire and weapons withdrawal monitoring requires special skills, experience in order to do that. So our thanks go out to the participating states for their contributions, of course. And I'll add one more thing, is that as these new monitors come in, it requires obviously improved infrastructure to accommodate them, and that infrastructure includes armored vehicles. So we recently gave thanks to the United Kingdom for 10 armored vehicles, and we'll also, you'll see soon announcement about another contribution, quite a big one, of armored vehicles from the European Union. So. Yeah, sorry, good point. On our website, there's a very helpful infographic that shows the number of monitors from different countries, and also the breakdown from monitors, other internationals and nationals. But I do encourage you to go to the website or our Facebook page, and you'll see the updated graphic there with very specific numbers from all the countries.
Kjell Jacobsen from Denmark.
Okay.
I have been following the events in Ukraine since last year, and I don't know exactly the mandate of OSCE, but the humanitarian convoys from Russia, which have been going into the eastern part of Ukraine since September, is that part of the mandate to be controlled by the SMM? Or if not, why not?
No, so, first of all, thank you for the question. There are 2 missions that are active. One is ours, of course, the special monitoring mission to Ukraine. And then there's also the border checkpoint monitoring mission. And their numbers are at about 20 or so, and they're based on 2 active border points on the border of Ukraine and the Russian Federation. And in terms of observing the movement of those convoys you referred to, you'll see from their reports, and also publicly available, is that they'll provide number counts. How many trucks crossed over, how many trucks came back. They would not inspect the vehicles. And as for us, there have been some occasions where we have encountered the convoys on their way to Donetsk or Luhansk. And you'll see also publicly reported in our reports that there have been 2 or 3 times where we've been close enough, to monitor what they're unloading. But I think the Ukrainian side have made quite a few comments on these convoys so far, so you might want to refer to them as well.
Чи є ще запитання?
Esteemed colleagues, do we have more questions? Thank you so much, Michael. That would be all for today. If to speak about tomorrow's schedule, you'll see the information at our website at our